I have Spencer Roberts here, Liberty High School alum, class of 2014. How are you doing this morning?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. Thanks for giving me your time. I appreciate you coming and giving me a little bit of information about who you are and where you're going. So thank you so much. Let me know a little bit about your background and where you grew up.
So I was born in Indiana, in the Indianapolis, Gary Fishers area, for those who know that. I moved down here in the 5th grade. So I did K through 4 up there, fun times, and then started in the Frisco ISD school district at Taylor Elementary, which was a first-year elementary school then, in their 5th grade class. And then,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was saying, started there 5th grade, then immediately moved to the middle school at Fowler in 6th grade. And then worked my way to Liberty in 9th grade. So.
Perfect. Well, what kind of student were you? Were you like shy or were you social? What kind of student were you in school?
Yeah, I've never been a shy kid. My brother used to be a lot shyer than he is, but I think just my personality pulls people out of that shell. It's something I'm proud of. So always been a very outgoing kid, always had to know everybody to feel welcome.
So I talked to Pete Hazard. He told me that I had to speak to you. You were an amazing student and you were in band, of course. And so give me a little bit about your passion as far as with music. How did that develop and where did that start?
That started really young. That started in grade school, actually. It was my favorite period of the day. And then when you hit 6th grade in the Frisco School District, you start the band program. Or choir, orchestra, whatever you choose. So we all kind of got into the lunchroom together, all us band people, band wannabes, and we got together and tried out a bunch of different instruments. And I remember doing poorly at a lot of them. As you know, it was sad because most of my top choices weren't suitable for me, but I ended up coming across my 6th grade beginning band teacher, Miss Amato, and she got me. It was somewhat reluctant to start with, but over time it was the best decision I could have made and she could have made for me. I don't regret it at all now. But in the moment I was like, this is kind of a back burner idea, you know? But that's why you trust your teachers because they know better sometimes, you know? They know more things than you do. And so that's kind of how I got started in band.
So what was your instrument of choice?
Or my instrument of choice would have been trombone, definitely, like high number 1 on the list, and then a very far away second would have been trumpet, and then maybe a closer third is like percussion. But yeah, saxophone was like 4th or 5th on the list.
Wow, trombone.
Yeah, I would have not done that if I had it my way.
So then you got playing a couple of instruments. How did you get over to the instrument of choice, which is your saxophone, right?
Yeah, so I started out on trombone. And anything brassy with a mouthpiece requiring a buzzing technique is not my forte. I know that now as an adult, like now that I'm older to comprehend that. As a child, you're just kind of like, I'll make it work, it'll be fine. And you know, my facial structure at the time, and I didn't have braces back then too, so buzzing with an overbite doesn't work very well. I didn't know this as a kid, right? I didn't know all the technicalities, but you know, the teachers were just kind of steering me towards the woodwinds. So I would try a bunch of different things, and I eventually ended up making my way towards the saxophone table because it was still shiny, so it kind of caught my eye a little bit.
So you were playing that saxophone. So did you play that all the way? You were at Fowler, you played saxophone?
Then Fowler, and then all the way through Liberty.
Okay, Liberty.
Yeah.
So you went in and you joined the band at Liberty, right?
Joined the band at Liberty happily. For that matter.
Was there any other things you were involved in besides band?
Not really. I used to play basketball in middle school. I thought I was going to be, you know, pursue a more athletic route for scholarships and stuff. And then I just, you know, that just didn't happen. So I ended up choosing music over athleticism because I'm a much better musician and it was just a better choice overall. And then when I hit high school, it was more just about, you know, school, like grades and practicing. I was just a music nerd, so that's just kind of what I did. And that was my 4 years. Yeah.
So tell me, how did you like band? How did you like the program there at Liberty?
I actually really love the band program. There were 2 programs, I guess.
Okay.
My freshman and sophomore year was one set of instructors that were not Pete. That's before Pete Hazard and his influence came in. And then junior and senior year is when I met Pete. Both of them, I think, taught me a lot of things about myself, and just where I was as a musician as well, helped me improve in different ways. The biggest thing about the PRAN program at Liberty that I enjoyed is that everyone had an accountability to each other, which is hard to find for people who are adolescents, to think outside of themselves. So that was the biggest thing, is that we were all invested in a common goal, but we were doing it responsibly towards one another. And it taught me a lot of things.
I like that. I like that. So we're mentioning Pete. Pete was your, when you're at Liberty, he was the band director, right?
Yeah, he was the head director.
And now he is the fine arts director of
Yeah.
So that's why we're mentioning Pete, because he kind of personally knew you. You guys had, established a relationship. And so Pete has given me so much information about you and how much he appreciated knowing you and how great of a band member you were. So kudos to Pete, because he is like, you got to talk to Spencer and just pick his brain about, his band program and where he is now. So we love Pete.
Yeah, we do. me included, believe me.
We talked about your leadership skills. He said that you were just very, you played a leadership role in the band, and you helped out a lot of different people. So how do you feel that leadership, that the leadership role that you had there in the band kind of helped you to be who you are now?
Well, I like to think of myself now as a humanist. I don't do a lot of like explicit like community service and stuff like that, but I'm more of an emotional connector. And I think, a combination of being an artist, right, and also having the opportunity to be a leader at a young age, where people are vulnerable and looking for people to kind of help guide them a little bit, is why I'm the man that I am today.
I like it.
It's one of the bigger reasons, because I'm very attuned to emotional distress and body language and things that I probably wouldn't have noticed in people unless I had to, pay attention to that in the band program and help monitor, stress with school, stress with UIL, stress with travel and practice and all the stuff that goes with being a musician. It's a stressful occupation.
Yeah.
And that's kind of helped me be that person. So I think that's one of the biggest things that leadership has taught me.
Perfect. I love it. So you graduated from Liberty in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
College, where did you go? What did you major in?
Southern Methodist University on the hilltop in Dallas, Texas. So I didn't go very far.
Right up the way, right?
Yeah. I majored in music education, right? Taking after my idols. And then I added, halfway through that, I added a composition major as well, because I found out I enjoyed writing music and being more involved in that process.
Okay. So while you're in college, how was that experience as a musician? Because you went in as, you went in as as an educator, right? And then you started, did you play more? Were you still playing your instrument then? And then you were intense in class as well. So tell me about your transition into college and how that affected you and your music.
It was a definite shift. In high school music making, it's just expected that you kind of show up to rehearsals, don't be late to stuff, and play well, the run-of-the-mill basics. But in college, it's a little different. You have graduate students, you have like a whole lot of other people in the ensemble that you have to be accountable to.
Yeah.
They're at a different skill level than you are. So I feel like I improved a lot quicker my 4 years of college than I did in high school, not because of any teaching at all. The teaching was great, both places. It was just the atmosphere. Like, I'm sitting in an ensemble with people who are 30 and who are married and who do this for a living, and I'm like 18. So then, what you're used to getting away with or used to seeing as like acceptable is no longer acceptable, right? So I had to switch gears a little bit and become more of an adult, which is normal, but it made me more of a professional. Okay. I played a lot more because I was one of the better musicians in the saxophone studio so I had a lot more responsibility there. And then I was also doing, my teaching things. So I was just really involved with music at a higher level of thinking, physical stuff aside. So it was more cerebral. But it was really good for me.
So what made you add the composition as a minor?
Yeah, I added it as another major.
As another major?
Yeah, because if I added it as a minor, I would just get the lessons. If I added it as a major, I would also get the performance opportunities that go along with like composing. So I just took that leap of faith and, was going to see where that ended up. I was always writing stuff in my sophomore and freshman years.
Okay.
And I would always ask people in the composition department to check out my stuff. Like, yo, I got this cool new thing. You want to listen to this and see if this is cool? And like, I kept asking people these things and they kept getting annoyed with me. So they were the ones that kind of pushed me towards going into the department, because then the professors could just take lessons and they wouldn't have to deal with me anymore. That's more of what happened. And I kind of obliged. So it was good for everybody involved. I got my study and my tutelage, and then everyone else didn't have to deal with me so much.
Yeah.
It was a really good addition.
So did you do any type of, as you compose, did you put on any type of concerts or any type of shows to showcase your music or your writing?
We do this really cool thing at SMU, which is called the Emerging Sounds concert. It happens every semester, once in the fall and then once in the spring. It's completely run by students. So any faculty intervention is completely devoided. We have our own panel of people. We have a president of the Emerging Sounds Committee. We have a secretary. We have like a whole board of advisees and everything that organize the dates, who's playing, who's not playing, getting the programs put together, the order of the concert, like everything. And we work with Meadows to put that on. So that's a really good experience as a composer to see behind the scenes how putting on a concert works of your own music, as well as just being involved in listening to your colleagues and your music in person and not through a computer MIT, right? So that's just a performance opportunity that I get every semester. And then there's also recitals that students put on and stuff. Like if you have good friends and you build connections, you get to write for the recitals. And so I've been doing a lot of that as well. So
that's cool.
Helps me
get
feedback of what I'm doing.
What year did you graduate from United Methodist?
I graduated my undergrad from in 2018, and I'm back in grad school there now. I started that in 2019.
Okay, so you're studying what in grad school now?
Studying composition again, and I added conducting as another master's.
Oh, wow. So how do you see conducting? Is that, you think it's like a lot more pressure because now you're like conducting the orchestra, right? Or you're conducting the band, or you know what I mean? With your music, I'm assuming, right?
Well, most of the time with my music, but also other like very famous things, right? Wide standards that people expect you to know. You don't want to mess it up. The biggest thing, the biggest reason I added conducting is because as an educator, as an aspiring educator and an aspiring composer, the skill of conducting is integral in music making in those areas. Like you have to have that knowledge, and it just helps you build upon what you're doing in other disciplines, right?
Yeah.
As far as the stress level goes, it's pretty stressful. Now studying and like learning scores and everything, that's a great time. I thoroughly enjoy that. Referencing recordings, heading a score, understanding what the composer is doing at like the cog and the screw level, it's a great time.
Yeah.
Being in front of the ensemble is completely reactionary, because you have an idea when you go on, and then depending on what sounds you get back, sometimes you have to throw that plan out and start afresh on the podium. So it's just keeping, balance between your artistic vision, their artistic vision, and then how to come to a mutual agreement by concert day. That's the stressful part, I feel like. But the music making itself is great. Yeah.
So how many songs have you actually composed? Do you have like a catalog? I mean, like, what do you have? Sounds great.
I have so the way that I organize myself, it's very tedious in certain areas of my life. Composition is one of them, right? My desktop is clean. I have one folder, and then I spur to other folders in that folder, one of them being my compositional folder, and then I spur to other folders in that folder, and I just kind of do a matrix thing.
Okay.
That would take me a long time to figure out how many I have, but they're all neatly organized.
Yeah.
I think I have upwards of like 50 by this point that I would put in front of someone else.
Wow.
All the other ones I wouldn't show. There's way more of those. I have no idea. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So do you
around 50
plan
that
on
I would.
just like, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying around 50 that I would prove as reasonable representations of my artistic talent at this moment, right?
Would you put that
Yeah.
like stream that? Would you consider like streaming your music or putting it together for other people to listen to?
If I had more performances of the actual, yes. The
Okay.
problem is getting performances. I don't always have the opportunity, right? Especially this year, it's not been the best. So, I'm working on that. I'm getting them what I can, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Was there I know that band had a big impact on where you're going and what you're doing. Is there a particular person that inspired you to kind of motivate you to keep on going? I know that I'm sure while you were in college, you had your ups and downs. And, there was some times where you just were like, what am I going to do? Was there anybody or any persons that you could lean on to motivate you and inspire you to keep it pressing? And if so, who would that be and what were they telling you at that time?
Okay, so considering the wording of that question, that actually makes me think of three instead of one, depending on
Okay.
how you look at it. So I'm gonna go with three.
Okay.
Okay, just talking about secondary school, just high school.
Yeah.
As cliche as it sounds, it's true. It's Pete Hazard. That gentleman uh, is like an extended family member to
Oh,
me.
great.
And so, as a musician, he obviously was a good director and helped me, improve my skills. But what I appreciate most about him is him making me a better man.
Mm.
Because I will admit that, as talented as I was as a musician and as much as I accomplished in high school and as cool as I thought I was, you know, I was aware that I wasn't the best guy. Like, I was a good guy by heart, but I wasn't the best man. I had a lot of flaws. And he was able to find them and he was able to figure out ways to get me to improve them
Oh, wow.
without being, without stepping too far or anything like that. I was able to work on myself and he was just more of a mentor and he's just really good at that. And I can't thank him enough
That's great.
for that because of where I am today. That is a huge thing. Collegiately, there's two people that I'm very close with that are also extended family members to me by now. One of them is Jack Delaney. He's the he has tenure. He's the professor of the Meadows Wind Ensemble that I've been working with a lot, and I study conducting with him now. So I've been with him for a while now. He is more of an inspirational life coach to me. He and I are very similar in terms of our energy. But one thing he's figured out how to do that I haven't figured out how to do is take the negative things in life and diminish them
Yeah.
to a point that they're minuscule. Like, they're still kind of, they still kind of affect me a little too much. But then I see his example and the way he describes things to me and how he helps me through situations.
Yeah.
And if I take that approach more, I think I'm going to be a more stable, artist, right? Because there's always ups and downs to art. Let me tell you. And you just have to be able to manage the downs when you get to those points. There are plenty of troughs.
Right.
Just figured out how to manage those really well. Another one is Dr. Shi Wong. She's my composition professor for a long time, my only composition professor. And she is one of those people that has gone through a lot of things, whether it be the color of her skin or her upbringing and where she was born, or, sexism and things like that. I don't want to get too deep into that stuff. That's personal. But long story short, she has gone through a lot more things than I have. And I've been through some of those things, let me tell you. And she understands how to navigate them at a very high level. So I look to her for guidance and insight onto how to navigate an artistic area that most people who look like me aren't necessarily taken seriously in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I appreciate all three of them for what they bring to me.
Those are great people to have you back you and support you for those reasons that you said, because there are definitely trials and tribulations as you move forward into adulthood, into your career. So good you have those supports, and I'm glad you were able to use those people and utilize them in a way that can help you evolve. So kudos to you and those people, right?
Yeah.
Is there any memorable fun moments you can think about when you were at FISD or within FISD?
You know, I was an awkward kid. Like, right? I mean, like, you can imagine, like, you know, as outgoing and as fun as I was, you know, all I did was practice and go to school. So there's this really awkward moment where, like, you know, I had the luxury of being a drum major my senior year, right? So I was like, I was one of the cooler kids on the block, and, you know, so I used that kind of to my advantage. And I was like hanging out in the band hall one day, and like there's this clarinet player that I was like really attracted to, right? I didn't know how to approach this player. Like, I didn't know how to approach her like reasonably, like cool. I'm just gonna kind of go for it. So I'm like in there, and like I was practicing, right? So I like kind of like work my way up within 6 feet, and I just start playing my all region etudes. Because apparently to me, like, that was my idea of like cool, right? Like I didn't know how to be any cooler. And I was like, if I play like the fast etude, right, with all the sharps, and I play it like 50 clicks faster than written tempo,
Wow.
maybe like that's gonna be, you know. And then it just so happened that I think Pete Hazard was like in the room. Like, he walked in. This is like a morning session. So he walks in. He's got his coffee, right? Like, you know, his sandals on. He's doing his thing, and he's walking to his office and just kind of sees me like, you know, trying to like croon here, and like just stops and like just stares for a minute. And I'm like playing, and I finish day two, whatever. And she just kind of looks at me, and then I just kind of like look behind me, and he's just like red face laughing, because at this point we had known each other well for a while, right? So this one, he knows what's going on. She has no idea what's going on. She thought I was just
what is going
playing or whatever. And then so I'm like, okay, cool. So I'll see you later. And I pack up, and then I go to see him in his office later, and to ask him what was going on, because I didn't. That's what he was laughing at. I thought he was just laughing at, you know, the fact that I was playing it grotesquely fast. And he looks at me, and I'm not going to necessarily repeat everything, but it was a very interesting conversation about male and female interaction. And I think it's one of the funniest stories I've ever had, because, you know, you have that conversation with your parents, but you like rarely do you have that kind of conversation at an 8 a.m. before like first period with your band director. You know, shout out to Pete Hazard for like dealing with that. That was a very interesting day.
He overextended himself that day.
I enjoy that story. That's a good one. That was eye-opening.
So what happened to the girl? Did you ever get?
No, well, I kept trying, but no. That's okay though. You know, that's all right.
You live and you learn. You live and you learn.
You live and you learn, man. You live and you learn.
So have you been back to Frisco lately, or anytime recently?
I'm here now. I'm at home.
Oh, you're home in Frisco.
Yeah.
So from the time that you were growing up in Frisco to where we are now, how do you think Frisco has grown and changed or evolved as far as a city?
Well, I mean, for those who live around Frisco or in Frisco, it's pretty obvious it's growing quickly in terms of numbers, right? The biggest thing that impacts the music department is the fact that schools are going from 3A or 4A to 4A or 5A, which for people who don't know, that just means the size of the band program, like how many kids are in the program, right? That makes a big difference on the way people are taught. So you have, like, if you have a 3A or 4A program, let's say they have 100 to 200, 300 students in them, then you may have 3 concert bands. So you might have 2 directors that, you know, one teaches the top band, one teaches the other 2 bands. You know, you have, you know, sectionals in the morning, rehearsal after school. You get a certain amount of private lesson teachers for them. If you're a 5A school all of a sudden one year, right, you get an influx of people, then you may need to add a band director, which changes the dynamic of, you know, the learning environment, or you have more kids, so you need more space to store instruments. So you need a bigger band hall, which is a renovation that you have to ask for from the state or the district, or you need more lesson teachers, or you need, you know, stuff like that affects how the operations day-to-day work, and also how good the teaching can be depending on the student to teacher ratio. So that's one thing I've noticed, just like being around the area as an educator who's more trained in this stuff, is you start to look at those data points a little bit more. So that's affecting most of it.
Okay. That's a good
Yeah.
thing to point out, especially from your eye, as far as being an educator in the music, in music. And so I think that's valuable information as well, because the district is growing,
Oh
as
yeah.
far as we're adding more schools and
Yeah.
things of that sort. So yeah, I
Mhm.
definitely agree with you. There's going to be some growth within
Lots of that, like lots of rezoning too. Like
Mhm.
kids will be in like 4 different schools over 4 years. You have like one school freshman year, then you get
Yeah,
rezoned to another school sophomore year, then rezoned to another school, and there's a lot going on there.
yeah.
Yeah.
So now that you're this grand composer, or soon to be, and you know how to write music and you know how to conduct, tell me, where do you see yourself going in a couple years from now? Where do you want to do? Where do you want to be?
Well, hopefully in a couple of years from now, I'll be graduating with honors, right? And then moving towards a doctoral plan. I want to get a doctorate in composition, is what I'm looking at, and then become a professor, a college professor. That's my
Okay.
current plan. Go the tenure track, do the thing. Because I enjoy educating, but I also enjoy the collegiate lifestyle in terms of higher education
Yeah.
and how involved you can get with students in terms of like special avenues that they want to take
Yeah.
within a certain discipline, right? That's something you can't get in secondary school. So
That's good.
that's my current plan.
Are you still going to compose and write
Oh yeah.
music?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Jack of all
That's
trades.
always going to be
You
something that
teach,
you do,
but
right?
I'm always going to be writing. I'm always going to be playing. I'll have a very full life. That's for sure. I'll have a lot of things I'm doing, and that's good because I like to keep my schedule busy. But I don't feel like you need to give up one area to do another. I feel like they can
I like
coexist.
that.
You know.
So, final question.
Hmm.
If you can go back to your high school self, what advice would you give your high school self?
Oh yeah. Most definitely, I would say, like high school Spencer. I would say, don't you know it's a big deal. Sometimes that doesn't go your way, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the outcome is going to be any worse, if not better, than what could have happened. Right? It just in the moment is a little inconveniencing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's advice for myself and anyone else who's listening, who's around that age group.
Yeah.
It's really easy to seem like one issue when you're like 14 is gonna like completely just change the planet Earth and everything will never be the same. Life goes on, just navigate the water and you'll end up where you want to be.
I like it. You know what? I was just thinking about the diversity of composers or conductors. How can
Yeah.
you speak a little bit on how you see diversity going, and how you see that changing, and how you may be impacting that as you move forward in your field?
That's a good question because I think this is kind of an interdisciplinary. This has kind of an interdisciplinary answer.
Okay.
Um, so, taking the State of the Union currently, as a member of the colored population or as a minority or however you prefer to say it, there's been a recent resurgence of, civil rights in the country. And it may seem as though, most every area is making a push. I can tell you from my experience being in the composition department that I'm in, and this is no, rag on the comp department. It just is. And just looking at other departments, I am currently the only African American composer
Okay.
within Meadows,
Okay.
within the entire music school. There are two things that come from that. One, obviously, there's a lack of representation.
Right.
So you don't get a lot of influence that you might get socially out of an African American voice that you can nurture in that kind of setting,
Yeah.
which is a downside. An upside in my particular case is that me having this understanding of where I am and what I'm able to, like how I'm able to present myself for those paying attention means that I can use the fact that I'm easily identifiable to my advantage. There are not many of us, so there are not many of us in the classical,
Right.
conservatory musical setting. to be specific,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think a lot of that has to do with, opportunities to get into this avenue, as well as those who may be interested, but who may not see examples of people who look like them in this, line of work. So they may think, oh, this isn't for me, or this just isn't something that, we do.
Mm-hmm.
I use this as much for my own pleasure and just the fact that I enjoy composing as much as I do politically, so that I can show people who are young and aspiring like me, who are paying attention, that, it's not just something that Europeans do. This is something that everyone can partake in with differing voices, right? You don't have to be German to write a leader.
Yeah.
You don't have to be French to write something impressionistic, right? These are obviously generalizations. This is not, exactly set in stone. But, if we're generalizing here, you don't have to be European to write good, meaningful, socially relevant, and inspiring classical music.
Yeah.
And not everyone knows that, because not everyone has that opportunity to see someone like them doing that. So I use this as a vessel for that as much as I do just to write music. So it's a good question, because it is very multidisciplinary, and I think about it a lot. That is a very large source of stress for me, because I'm always very aware of how I come off to other people. So, yeah.
Well, I would like to thank you for sitting with me today and giving me your time. And I just pray that you continue to grow and be the best that you can be in what you're doing. And I just thank you again.
Thank you. And thank you, FISD.
Well, that was Spencer Roberts, Liberty High School, class of 2014. And he's an amazing person. And we'll follow up with you soon and see where you're going and what you're doing. I appreciate your time.